You wake up in 1789. There's no gentle alarm clock, no snooze button, no soothing lo-fi playlist to ease you into the day. Instead, you get the charming sound of a rooster screaming in your ear like it is auditioning for heavy metal. Your bed? A lumpy, straw-stuffed mattress that smells faintly of sweat, damp wool, and the kind of mildew you're pretty sure could qualify as a biological weapon. You sit up, your nightshirt clinging to you because there's no such thing as central heating. Your breath fogs in the air, reminding you that winter hasn't quite finished punching you in the face. You try to shake it off. The sun's not even fully up, but the day's already here to bully you. Outside, you hear the creak of wagon wheels, the clop of hooves on cobblestones, and the occasional ha-ah from some guy in a tri-corner hat who is definitely way too excited to be awake right now. The air smells like wet earth, wood smoke, and, because this is 18th century America, horse poop. Lots and lots of horse poop. And then it hits you. You're not just some guy trying to make it through another day in a country that has barely learned to walk. You're George freaking Washington, hero of the Revolution, first commander-in-chief, a living, breathing symbol of freedom, liberty, and how to look majestic while sweating through a wool coat. Oh, and as of like 5 minutes ago, you're also the first president of the United States. Congratulations! The job you didn't even want just landed squarely in your lap like a cat you've never met deciding your keyboard is its bed. You didn't campaign. You didn't plaster your name on posters. You didn't kiss a single baby. In fact, you tried, very politely, to avoid this whole mess. But apparently, winning the revolution and then retiring to your farm didn't get you off the hook. Because everyone, and I mean everyone, from farmers to politicians to that one guy who definitely smells like rum at 10 a.m., has decided you're the only person who can hold this chaotic baby nation together without dropping it. The United States right now? Picture 13 unruly teenagers at a family reunion. They barely agree on what to eat for breakfast, let alone how to run a government. Some are stubborn and proud, others are broke and bitter, and a few are just here to cause trouble. And you've been handed the role of reluctant dad in this sitcom, except the laugh track is replaced by political arguments and musket fire. You step outside and take in the scene. New York City, yes, the first capital of the United States, isn't the glittering skyscraper wonderland you're picturing. It's small, cramped, and still smells faintly of the British occupation a few years back. Streets are uneven, muddy when it rains, and full of people hawking goods from carts. Kids run barefoot, women in aprons hang laundry between buildings, and stray dogs chase chickens like it's a sport. The buildings are all brick or wood, looking like they were thrown together by people who had more enthusiasm than architectural training. As you walk, people stop and stare. Some tip their hats. Others give you this wide-eyed, reverent look, like they're meeting a celebrity, which in their world you are. But there's also this unspoken pressure behind every handshake, every "Good morning, Mr. President." It's the weight of their expectations. They want you to fix everything, unite the states, keep them safe, make this grand experiment called America work. No pressure. The truth is, you never wanted to be here. Back in 1783, when the war was finally over, you practically ran home to Mount Vernon. You wanted the quiet life, tending to your plantation, riding your horse through the fields, drinking tea while the sun set over the Potomac. But the country had other plans. They didn't just want you, they needed you. Because who else was going to keep Alexander Hamilton from bankrupting the place before it even started? Who else could keep Thomas Jefferson from picking a fight with everyone who didn't agree with him? So now, here you are, about to walk into a job that doesn't even really exist yet. The Constitution is brand new, the ink practically still drying. No one's entirely sure what the president's supposed to do, which sounds fun until you realize it means you get to make up the rules while half the country yells at you for making them wrong. You glance down at your clothes. The suit is fine, dark, and tailored, but the collar is stiff, the fabric heavy. Everything itches. Your shoes pinch because apparently comfort hasn't been invented yet. The streets are loud, horses snorting, wagon wheels rattling, street vendors shouting prices for oysters, bread, and the occasional mystery meat. You can almost taste the mix of wood smoke, salt air from the harbor, and that ever-present tang of manure. Everywhere you go, you can't escape it. People are watching you. Some admire you, sure, but others, they're waiting for you to mess up. There are whispers that you're too aristocratic, that you'll crown yourself king, that you'll cling to power until they pry it from your cold, dead hands. You know you won't, but they don't. And honestly, you're tired already. The thought of what's ahead, endless debates, constant scrutiny, political infighting, makes you wish you could just pull a disappearing act. But you can't, because deep down, you know the country's too fragile to survive without someone holding the center, and like it or not, that someone is you. So you square your shoulders, straighten your jacket, and keep walking toward Federal Hall, where your inauguration will be held. You pass sailors unloading cargo, merchants haggling in the street, and a small group of children chasing each other with sticks. Somewhere in the distance, church bells ring, echoing through the city. In a few hours, you'll stand before a crowd, place your hand on a Bible, and swear to protect and defend a country that is still figuring out how to spell its own name on official documents. You'll smile, wave, and pretend the weight on your shoulders isn't crushing. You'll promise to serve, to lead, to hold this whole thing together. And maybe, just maybe, you'll convince yourself you can actually pull it off. But for now, you just keep walking, your boots thudding against the uneven cobblestones, the crowd parting ahead of you. You can feel history closing in like a tide. There's no turning back. The presidency in 1789 is nothing like the glossy, slow-motion TV montage you might be imagining. There's no red carpet to the White House because the White House isn't even built yet. You're living in a rented house in New York City, trying to look presidential while also hoping the roof doesn't leak during a thunderstorm. And the job? It is less leader of the free world and more full-time crisis manager for a country that is basically a startup running on good vibes and debt. Your mornings start early, not because you're an overachiever, but because there's no such thing as blackout curtains. And the second the sun peeks over the horizon, your room is basically a lighthouse. You get dressed in clothes that are equal parts formal and torture device, stiff collars that feel like they were trying to strangle you, wool coats that weigh more than some toddlers, and shoes that pinch your toes like they're holding a grudge. Breakfast is simple. Bread, maybe some cold meat, maybe tea, because this is before brunch became a personality trait. Then the real work begins. You've got letters stacked on your desk like a bad game of Jenga, all of them demanding something. Governors want money for infrastructure. Merchants want protection from pirates. Farmers want relief from taxes. And then there are the letters from regular citizens who just want to tell you how much they think you stink at the job already, even though you've barely started. You can almost hear the ink dripping with sarcasm. Meetings are constant. Some are with your cabinet, which, at this point, is basically just a handful of smart but exhausting men with strong opinions and bigger egos. Hamilton talks fast, waves his arms around, and throws out words like fiscal policy, as if that means anything to the farmers still plowing fields with oxen. Jefferson sits there looking calm but simmering, his voice dripping with that, "I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed" tone that makes every disagreement feel personal. Adams just seems like he's one bad day away from chewing the furniture. Then there's the ceremonial stuff. People expect you to host levees twice a week, which sounds fancy, but is really just you standing in a room while rich people line up to shake your hand, bow slightly, and mumble something about the honor of meeting you. You can't sit, you can't eat, and you can't really have a real conversation. It's like being a royal statue with a pulse. And you have to do it all with a polite smile plastered on your face, even though your back is killing you and you are pretty sure your wig is slowly sliding off center. When you're not smiling for the public, you're signing papers. Endless, boring, sleep-inducing papers, proclamations, appointments, official letters, all of which require that old-fashioned dip your quill in ink style of writing. No Ctrl plus Z here. You make a mistake, you get to start the whole page over. By the end of the day, your hand cramps so badly you wonder if this is how it ends for you. Death by paperwork. And the rules? They're not really there yet. You're making them up as you go, trying to figure out what's presidential and what's just weird. Like, should you be allowed to ride your horse around the city without guards? Is it okay to have dinner with friends without it being seen as political favoritism? Should you personally answer every letter sent to you, even the ones calling you a British sympathizer? No one knows. You're the first president. You're literally writing the manual in real time. Oh, and did I mention that every single thing you do gets scrutinized by the press? Newspapers back then are like 18th century Twitter, loud, petty, and not entirely accurate. If you wear a nice suit, you're accused of being too aristocratic. If you wear something plain, you're undignified for the office. If you leave a meeting early, clearly you're plotting a dictatorship. The level of overanalysis is enough to make you want to live in a cave. Even meals become political theater. You can just sit down and eat without thinking about the seating arrangement. Who asks next to whom? Which rival might throw shade? Which ally might feel left out? People watch what you eat, too. Too much wine? You're a drunk? Too little? You're uptight. It's exhausting. And because there's no real separation between work and personal life yet, people show up at your door unannounced, wanting to talk politics, sell you something, or just say hi because you're the president. You could be in your nightshirt, halfway through brushing your teeth, and some state official from Georgia will be in your parlor wanting to discuss trade policy. The pay? Technically, it's decent, $25,000 a year. But remember, this is a country deep in debt, so a lot of that is tied up in a "we'll pay you eventually" situation. And you've got massive personal expenses because, unlike modern presidents, you're expected to fund a lot of your own entertaining. Want to host a dinner for foreign diplomats? That's coming out of your pocket. Want to keep your clothes looking sharp enough to impress visiting royalty? You better have a good tailor and a better bank account. And just to keep things spicy, you're still dealing with the leftover chaos from the revolution. Britain hasn't totally left North America. They were hanging out in forts on the frontier like that ex who just wanted to return your hoodie. Spain's got control of the Mississippi River and is giving you side-eye. France is, well, France, which means they dealing with their own revolution and occasionally sending you letters that are equal parts charming and alarming. At the end of the day, when you finally think you can relax, you remember that you have to write a letter to some state legislature explaining why their latest request for federal funds is, in fact, insane. Or you have to read a report about some frontier skirmish that could turn into a war if you blink the wrong way. You blow out the candles and sink into that lumpy mattress, knowing tomorrow is going to be the exact same whirlwind of handshakes, debates, and wondering why you ever said yes to this in the first place. And the irony of it all? You didn't just get this job without asking for it. You got it because you didn't want it. People trust you more because you weren't chasing power like it was a free buffet. They think that makes you noble, which sure, maybe it does, but it also means you were trapped in the most demanding job in the country with no one to blame but history. Your days might be grueling, but the people you have to deal with, that's a whole new flavor of chaos. You didn't just sign up to run a country. You accidentally signed up to be the referee in an eternal brawl between some of the most stubborn, dramatic, and wildly different personalities history has ever shoved into the same room. You thought winning a war meant teamwork? Cute. That was temporary. Now it's politics, which is just war with more chairs and fewer bayonets. Let's start with your cabinet. These are supposed to be your ride-or-die crew. The Avengers of the New Republic, the people who are going to help you keep this country from falling into 1,000 pieces. In reality, they're brilliant, but also exhausting. There's Alexander Hamilton, your Secretary of the Treasury, who's basically the original finance bro. He's a hurricane of energy, always talking about national debt, taxes, and the central bank like they're the hottest topics in the world. He writes so much and so fast you wonder if he even sleeps, or if he just drinks enough coffee to make a horse jittery. He's sharp, charming, and occasionally so cocky, you're tempted to knock his quill right out of his hand. Then there's Thomas Jefferson, your Secretary of State. He's tall, elegant, and the polar opposite of Hamilton. Where Hamilton wants a strong central government and big cities, Jefferson dreams of a country full of farmers living peaceful lives with plenty of personal freedom. He's polite, sure, but you can feel the tension when he and Hamilton are in the same room. They glare at each other like rival chefs at a cooking competition. You half expect someone to start throwing bread rolls at any moment. And then there's John Adams, your vice president. Theoretically, your second in command, practically your unwanted shadow. He's a brilliant man, no doubt, but he's also got a knack for turning every conversation into a lecture, and he's not subtle about wanting your job. He sits in the Senate most of the time, where he manages to make enemies with the speed of a toddler knocking over block towers. You can't forget Congress either. Imagine herding cats. If the cats were armed, loud, and each thought they were the only cat that mattered. They argue over everything. Where the Capitol should be, how taxes should be collected, whether the president should be allowed to have fancy dinners without causing a national scandal. One guy thinks you're too powerful. Another thinks you're not powerful enough. A third just really wants to complain about the roads in his district. And outside the halls of government, you've got foreign diplomats. France sends people in powdered wigs who keep dropping not-so-subtle hints about how you owe them for helping in the revolution. Britain sends people who look at you like you were a rebellious teenager they still expect to come crawling back. Spain sends envoys who speak politely but make it very clear they're not giving you an inch on the Mississippi River. Every meeting is a chess game, except all the pieces are human and half of them are lying to your face. Oh, and the people? You love them, sure, but they're a lot. Everywhere you go, crowds gather. Farmers bring baskets of produce as gifts. Merchants shake your hand so hard you're worried they'll dislocate it. Kids stare up at you like you're a giant, which, to be fair, at over 6 feet tall in a time when most men barely hit 5.5, you kind of are. But for every admirer, there's a critic. Some people mutter about you being too king-like. Others think you're not decisive enough. You can't win. You even have to manage your friends carefully. Your old war buddies? They respect you, but they also want favors, land grants, government positions, influence. And if you say no, suddenly the camaraderie fades, and they rewriting letters to the newspapers about how maybe Washington is not such a hero after all. The press loves this. Oh, the newspapers. If Hamilton and Jefferson are your squabbling children, the press is your gossip-loving neighbor who listens through the walls and then tells the entire town their version of what they heard. If there's a disagreement in the cabinet, you can bet it'll be in print within the week, usually with your name attached and at least 2 quotes you never actually said. One paper claims you're secretly plotting to make yourself king. Another says you're too weak to lead. You can't even sneeze without someone turning it into a political metaphor. And because everyone you deal with is also trying to make a name for themselves, there's a constant undercurrent of ambition in every conversation. No one's just giving advice. They're maneuvering for position, looking for leverage, or trying to make you look bad so they can look better. It is like a never-ending dinner party where everyone smiles politely while secretly trying to steal your silverware. Even the smaller interactions wear you down. A merchant invites you to his shop just to look. But really he's hoping you'll be seen there so he can boost business. A farmer writes to you about how much he admires your leadership, but the second paragraph is about how he'd like the government to forgive his taxes. People send you gifts, wine, furniture, livestock, and each one comes with a string attached, some favor they'll call in later. You try to keep it all balanced. You nod when Hamilton and Jefferson argue, pretending you're considering both sides, even though you know one of them is about to storm out and write a scathing letter about the other. You try to keep Adams busy so he doesn't cause more trouble in the Senate. You shake hands, make small talk, and avoid promising anything you can't deliver, but it's exhausting. There are days you want to grab them all, cabinet members, congressmen, diplomats, even the newspaper editors, and tell them to go outside, take a walk, and remember that the country is still brand new and barely hanging together. You want them to understand that this isn't IT about winning arguments, it's about making sure the whole fragile thing doesn't collapse before it even gets going. Instead, you smile. You play the game. Because that's what leadership is right now. Endless negotiation, keeping tempers in check and making people think you agree with them just enough that they don't set the place on fire. And as you look around at the personalities swirling around you, the hot-headed, the idealistic, the stubborn, the ambitious, you can't help but think, the war was easier. At least then you knew who the enemy was. You'd think the end of the day would bring relief. You've survived the debates, the levees, the endless parade of handshakes and passive-aggressive conversations. The sun sinks, the streets empty, and you imagine yourself finally sinking into a chair with a glass of wine, shutting the world out for a few hours. But that's not how it works. The danger doesn't clock out just because the daylight does. It just changes form. When the city grows dark, it also gets loud in a different way. The rhythmic clatter of wagon wheels fades, replaced by the muffled laughter of drunks stumbling home, the sharp shouts of late-night arguments in the alleyways, and the bark of stray dogs that always sound like they've spotted a ghost. From your rented presidential mansion, you can hear the sound of footsteps on cobblestones, sometimes too slow, too deliberate, making you wonder if someone's lingering where they shouldn't be. You know you have no Secret Service. There's no team of agents in dark suits with earpieces guarding the perimeter. You've got a handful of guards, sure, but most of the time they re-stretched thin or stationed at ceremonial posts that look impressive but don't actually stop someone determined. If a person wanted to push their way through your front door, there's not much between them and you except a latch, a candle, and maybe your own sword. And it is not just the threat of actual violence, it is the paranoia that comes with the job. Rumors swirl around you like gnats in summer. People are saying you're secretly plotting to crown yourself king, that you're selling the country back to the British, that you've already chosen your successor in some shady backroom deal. Newspapers print half-truths, outright lies, and the occasional personal jab just to see if you'll react. You try to ignore it, but when you're alone at night, those words stick like burrs in your brain. Then there's disease. Cities in 1789 are breeding grounds for all kinds of invisible killers. Smallpox, yellow fever, typhus. They're not just in the medical books. They're in the streets, in the air, in the person who shook your hand that morning. People don't know about germs yet, so every time someone coughs in your direction, you wonder if this is how you'll go out. The only treatments available are about as scientific as flipping a coin, bloodletting, herbal brews, or the occasional suggestion that you walk it off. The nights are also when news from the outside world arrives, messengers on horseback bringing letters from the frontier, from Europe, from political allies or enemies. You've learned to dread the knock on the door after dark. Good news can wait until morning. Bad news refuses to. A letter from the West might tell you that settlers have clashed with native tribes, and now there's the risk of a full-scale conflict. A packet from London might be filled with diplomatic insults dressed up as polite correspondence. You can't switch off. Every problem is urgent. Every decision feels like the one that could unravel everything. You walk the halls of your residence sometimes, candle in hand, listening to the creak of the floorboards and the distant wind off the harbor. The rooms are large but cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones and makes every shadow feel heavier. You pass portraits of dead men from another era, their painted eyes following you like they're silently judging how you're handling things. And outside your walls, there are people who genuinely wish you harm. You know it. They don't like your policies, your face, or the fact that you're the one in charge. Maybe they lost a fortune in the war, maybe they think you're too friendly with the British, maybe they just hate anyone with power, and they don't always fight with words. Knives, pistols, poison. These aren't abstract threats. You've heard the stories, and you know it's only a matter of time before someone tries something. Even the streets you've ridden through in the daytime become different creatures after dark. In the dim light of lanterns, they're full of shadowy corners and narrow passages where anything or anyone could be hiding. You remember the Revolutionary War all too well. You've seen what people are capable of when they believe they're fighting for something. And now you're the symbol of everything they want to fight against. Sometimes the danger is more subtle. You attend an evening dinner with foreign diplomats, and halfway through the meal you realize they're probing you with questions, trying to get you to reveal something you shouldn't. Every toast, every polite laugh is a test. A misplaced word could end up in a report sent across the ocean, used against you in some negotiation weeks later. You sip your wine carefully, not because you're worried about drunkenness, but because you're not entirely sure what's in it. And then there's the mental toll. Even when you're not facing immediate threats, your brain refuses to let you rest. You replay conversations from earlier in the day, wondering if you offended someone without meaning to. You think about the bills piling up on your desk, the treaties that need negotiating, the rivalries in your cabinet that seem one heated argument away from exploding. It's like your mind is a tavern that never closes, the same rowdy arguments replaying all night long. Every so often, there's a noise, a crash outside, a distant shout that makes you freeze. Is it a drunk knocking over a barrel, or is it something else? You've been in enough battles to know that danger rarely announces itself until it's already at your door. And in those quiet moments after the noise fades, you find yourself wondering, maybe you've already made enemies powerful enough to come for you. Even your own body feels like a potential threat. You're not a young man anymore. You're tired more often than you'd like to admit. Your old war wounds ache in the cold. If something serious happened, a fight, an attack, could you even defend yourself the way you once did? It's a question you try not to think about, but in the silence of the night, it finds you anyway. You blow out the last candle and climb into bed, pulling the blankets up to your chin. The mattress sags under you, and the room smells faintly of smoke from the fireplace. Outside, the wind rattles the shutters, and the darkness feels thicker than it did an hour ago. You tell yourself that you're safe, that your guards are alert, that the city sleeps peacefully. But the truth is, you never really believe it. You've seen too much. You know how quickly peace can shatter. You close your eyes and try to will yourself into sleep, but your mind refuses. Somewhere out there, someone's plotting. Somewhere, someone's spreading a rumor that'll hit the papers in the morning. Somewhere, some crisis is brewing, and by this time tomorrow, it'll be your problem. That's the real danger of the presidency. It's not the sword at your throat. It's the knowledge that the sword is always there, even if you can't see it. And so the night stretches on, every creak and whisper reminding you that in this job, even darkness isn't your friend. Picture this. Centuries later, people still put George Washington on money, name streets after him, and argue about his wooden teeth like they're the key to unlocking some great national mystery. But back in the day, none of that was guaranteed. This whole first president gig could have gone sideways faster than a bad Tinder date. America was a baby, screaming, teething, throwing food, and Washington had to be the babysitter. If he messed it up, the entire country could have slid back into chaos. You think politics is messy now? Imagine it without a constitution everyone actually respected, no centuries of precedent, no, we'll just follow tradition. Nah. This was political parkour with no safety net. And here's the thing, Washington didn't even want the job. That's why it matters so much that he took it. Most people in power, they want more of it. They smell it like sharks smell blood. But this guy, he was practically allergic to it. He had already retired, twice, and both times got yanked back into the chaos like the reluctant protagonist in an action sequel. That says something about leadership that it's easy to forget. The best leaders sometimes are the ones chasing the title. They're the ones who groan when it's handed to them. It asks the difference between, I want to be president so I can be important, and by fine, I'll be president so the whole thing doesn't catch fire. And when you zoom out, you see how this reluctant acceptance set the tone for American democracy. Washington could have become king, literally. People were whispering about it. The country was so unstable that a monarchy almost seemed safer. If he had been a power-hungry guy, we might still have crowns on our currency and be celebrating George Day instead of the 4th of July. But instead, he said, nope, set up limits, and walked away after 2 terms. That quiet little act? It told future leaders, this seat isn't yours forever. Imagine if every president took that seriously. Yeah, I'll let you sit with that uncomfortable thought for a sec. Also, Washington's presidency was basically a live experiment. He had to invent the job while doing it. There was no how to be a president handbook. He made decisions, like creating a cabinet, that shaped the role forever. That's why today, when a president tweets something that causes an international incident, you can trace the chain of events back to George deciding, yeah, maybe I shouldn't do everything alone. He was building the foundation while living in the house, and somehow it didn't collapse on his head. So why does it still matter? Because history loves to repeat itself, especially when we stop paying attention. Washington's whole vibe, humility, restraint, service over ego, is something modern politics desperately needs but rarely delivers. We keep celebrating the loudest, most dramatic leaders, but the quiet, reluctant ones often leave the most lasting impact. Power doesn't just reveal character, it amplifies it. And Washington, for all his flaws, proved that you could hold enormous power and still put it down before it owned you. The real kicker? His refusal to cling to the presidency became one of America's first traditions worth keeping. That transfer of power, peaceful, orderly, was revolutionary in itself. No coups, no assassinations, no, I'm not leaving and you can't make me. Just a guy saying, thanks, but I'm good, and walking away into history. You don't have to be a historian to see how rare that is. So yeah, when you think about Washington, skip the boring textbook version and remember the reluctant dude who accidentally set the standard for an entire country. And now, here is the question you need to answer. If you were handed the keys to a chaotic, half-broken nation, would you step up like he did? Or ghost the entire thing and let someone else deal with it? Drop your answer in the comments, and while you're at it, smash that like button for more gloriously uncomfortable history.